Transformer or Terminator? You decide. In our forthcoming Cloud Debate, we invite you to join a discussion on one of the most breakthrough results of 4IR, GPT. Short for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, GPT artificial intelligence technology marks a paradigm shift in the evolution of human-computer communication. By conversing with users in a natural and human-like manner, GPT apps hold the potential to revolutionize everything from customer service, support systems and personal assistance to writing, learning, coding and designing. Join the next UJ Cloud Debate at 6 p.m. on 28 June as we explore the practical applications of how to chat GPT. Register now at UJ.AC.ZA/4IR. The University of Johannesburg. The future reimagined.
Short for Generative Pre-trained Transformers, GPTs are based on an advanced trained language model with its ability to generate coherent and contextually relevant responses to human queries posed in a user-friendly browser chat box. It has opened new possibilities for human-machine interaction. Welcome to the next Cloud Debate episode. Are GPTs the next chapter in our evolution?
Whether it's turning on its creator in Ex Machina, or looking for love in AI or Her,
Hello, I'm here.
artificial intelligence permeates Hollywood's blockbusters.
I'll be back.
But now, with the arrival of chatbots like ChatGPT, suddenly AI seems a lot closer to fact than fiction.
This has caused more excitement in the tech world than anything for several years.
But it's still hard to separate the hype from fear-mongering and informed concerns.
Homogenized, simple responses that are wrong. To me, that leads to some form of dystopia.
So what do the new AI chatbots mean for the future of the internet and our relationship with machines?
Joining me right now in studio is none other than Dr. Herman Mayberg, who is an XR explorer, a solutionist, an academic adventurer, and a pioneer and expert in VR and XR technologies. Dr. Mayberg, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Abby.
So, let's just talk to the viewers. What is a ChatGPT in a nutshell?
So ChatGPT is one of the first open, accessible AIs that's available to us. It's made available by a company called OpenAI, and they started 7 years ago with this journey on how can AI benefit humankind. The focus is very much on openness, so it's open for the public, and it's one of the first that came into the public domain. So since November last year, the world has completely changed as we got this new technology. And what it does is it's basically a predictive machine. It predicts what character needs to come next, what word needs to come next when you're asking it a question. And it's based off a very large database of information that it gathered over the last 7 years or so. And they're using that to generate new information, generate answers to questions, and just to assist humankind in our endeavor going forward.
So it has really taken a lot of the media and the world by storm since the launch of ChatGPT. But now we're also starting to see that there's been other forms of GPTs coming to the fore, such as Bard by Google. There's other forms of GPTs, plugins, extensions. And so I think there is, to an extent, a lack of awareness of how this could be used in various sectors or in various contexts.
It's completely overhauling the way we work with computers. It's making our lives a whole lot easier, and it also comes with a lot of threats in terms of job cuts and the likes. And people are often afraid of new technologies coming in. So I often liken it to the introduction of the calculator into mathematics. Everyone said that the calculator will completely take away mathematicians' jobs. And what it did was exactly the opposite. It just enhanced mathematicians' abilities to generate new knowledge and new information. And that's how I see ChatGPT. Yes, there are risks involved with it, but we can mitigate that risk.
Absolutely, and I think just to unpack that point around the specificity around GPTs being a tool, I mean, the mere fact that calculators is a good example in terms of mathematics. Back in the day, you would just do plus, minus, times, or division, and now it actually evolved into a state where you could actually do trigonometry on the calculator using sine, cos, and tan. Would you say that at this point in time, GPTs, we're probably at the stage of plus, minus, division, multiplication, and we are yet to come to a stage of actually doing more sophistication, actually doing more things that are a little bit more evolved, a little bit on more of an advanced stage. We know that it's rapidly evolving every day. There are new things that are coming through, plugins, extensions, various forms of GPTs. ChatGPT in itself having various updated versions. Would you say that it's going to come a more sophisticated calculator?
I definitely believe so. I mean, if you just take the progression from November last year up to now, it's quite amazing what has transpired in this short period of time. And I think we don't know yet where this is going to end. It might end in a blast of nothingness, which some AI researchers are predicting. They liken it to nuclear warheads, where we saw this major progression into countries focusing on military war, on nuclear war, and ultimately there was a accord signed saying that we won't be going into nuclear wars. And that might be the case for AI. We saw that Italy has now banned this technology. Germany is investigating it as well. So it might be that it becomes so overregulated that it dies down. I, on the other hand, think that this is such a valuable tool, and we need to focus on getting it into our schools, into our daily lives, and using it for the progression of humankind. To your question, I think we're still at the very early days. We need to see where this is going, but what is happening now is already quite amazing. So yeah, we'll definitely get there, and I think the next 1 or 2 years is going to be the watershed moment where we'll see where this is going.
So before we see the leaps and bounds that it can bring us, let's rather dive straight in and see on the more basic level, because I think a lot of people are very intrigued to know what it is or what it can do. And I think there's still a lot of the viewers back home who have either used it or are yet to use it. So I think let's dive straight in. Let's see what, so just walk us through from the sign up page, right, and we'll go into some tangible examples as well in terms of what ChatGPT is in this example of what it can do.
So the basic ChatGPT website looks very boring once you get to it. So it's chat.openai.com, and you would go through a sign-up process like any other website. And after going through the sign-up process, where you'll need to enter your email address and set up a password, you'll be logged in, and you can access ChatGPT 3.5. So this weekend we've got friends coming over. It's a family with 2 children. So let's start a new chat, and we'll ask ChatGPT to create us a menu for this weekend, because I'm too lazy to do that. So we'll give it a prompt. I have friends coming over for the weekend. It is 2 adults and 1 child together.
How old is the child?
Okay, yeah, let's give it 1 child. The child is 5 years old.
Okay, so we won't be giving any purity or any those kinds of porridges. It's proper food, right?
It's proper food. Cool. But the child is a very picky eater.
Right.
Okay. In total,
maybe we can ask ChatGPT what is the best way to hide vegetables in for a 5-year-old?
That's an excellent.
They don't like to have their vegetables.
In total, there will be 4 adults and 3 children. develop a menu for the weekend starting on Friday evening. So that's the prompt, and this is a new field for many of us, is how do you interact with ChatGPT? So the more information you give it, the more accurate the answer is that it's going to give you. Now let's see what it does. So there it spits out a menu for us as we go along. And let's just take Sunday morning. We'll have breakfast, a yogurt parfait bar. Lunch will be chicken or vegetable quesadillas, and then dinner spaghetti and marinara sauce. So
ChatGPT is high carb, isn't it?
Very high carb, very high carb. But it is based off the American diet.
Yes.
So yeah. Now we've got that, and this in essence is already amazing. But let's ask it to we now need to go and do grocery shopping. So let's ask it to give us a grocery list. So we'll say for the menu above, develop a shopping list. And there we get our shopping list. It's split into different groups. So we've got proteins, we've got our dairy and eggs, bakery. So it even makes it easier for you as you're walking through the grocery store just to pick up everything that is placed together. So our produce is together, our pantry is together.
Very impressive. Now, let's see if we can really put it more to the test, right? From a South African perspective, we know a lot of families are on a tight budget. So if we had to align these particular grocery items to specific price ranges, and if we ask ChatGPT, could you give us the grocery items with price ranges in South African rands to the best of their knowledge up to September 2021? Let's see if you'd be able to give us.
Inflation has played a big role since then, but let's ask it. Could you estimate the prices in South African rands for this shopping list based off your knowledge? So this hasn't been tested, but let's see what it gives us. So it does tell us that its cutoff was in September 2021, so it might not be that accurate. But here it gives us a price index. Yeah. So olive oil between 20 and 40 rands. Remember, this is for the portions that we will be using. So it's not for a full bottle of olive oil. And we can even ask it to, can you give the total? So there we go. The total budget would be between 800 and 1,500 rands for this weekend's food, which is quite a lot. So let's follow that up by saying that is a bit expensive. Can you suggest a cheaper menu? Let's say the order of 500 rands. Brilliant. And there it goes, spitting out a different menu. Again, very carb intensive.
But a little bit more healthier than the previous one. I'm seeing a lot of protein in eggs and poultry.
Yeah, and we're seeing beans coming into play as well. So that's excellent.
Fantastic. This is really impressive.
And the thing is, within a particular chat, it'll remember what it said to you in previous chats. So you can follow up with new questions as you think about it. And that's the power of this technology. It's not you just thinking and Googling things over and over again, but it remembers what it told you.
Let's take this a step further, because my colleague really wants to go to the Wimbledon that's happening in London in June, July. And I think his dream was always to watch a Djokovic final. Not really sure if Djokovic will reach the final again. He might not. But I hear that ChatGPT could assist in a potential itinerary for someone traveling. Obviously, in terms of prices, it may not be quite absolute, but perhaps suggested affordable places to stay and flights to take around this particular time, which is peak season. Could it suggest something?
Let's have a look. I am interested in attending Wimbledon. Can you suggest an itinerary including flights from Johannesburg So there we go. It gives us a 7-day plan on what we could potentially do on our travels to Wimbledon. Now, remember, I just asked it to give us an itinerary and flights from Johannesburg. I didn't tell it to where Wimbledon is.
Yes.
So it knew it's in London.
Yeah.
It gave us a few options that we could potentially fly, and the flight duration is between 11 and 12 hours. So that's the power of ChatGPT 3. But if we go into ChatGPT 4, which is a more advanced version that was launched in 2024 on May 24th of this year, so it's still brand new. It's just a week old. You can empower your search by adding plugins, and these plugins take ChatGPT to the next level. So there's a few plugins that's already installed on my ChatGPT.
Just for the viewers to be aware, they have to pay a fee per month, right?
Yeah. So ChatGPT 4 is a paid version. It's $20 a month, so roughly 400 rands. Unless something happened to the rand in the meantime.
And hopefully, maybe institutions will look into institutional licensing.
That would be excellent. And OpenAI has launched institutional licensing options as well, which has extra protection. So as we interact with ChatGPT, this all gets pooled, all of our information gets pooled, and it ultimately makes ChatGPT better. But if your company using this service, it might it poses a risk. So what ChatGPT has done now, or OpenAI has done now, is they've taken the liberty of making a institutional license only for that institution. So none of the information gets shared.
Excellent.
Yeah, but on the plugin side, we've got a few different apps that we can plug into ChatGPT, and that then just makes it that much stronger. So you can take a look through what we've got here. I've now installed Expedia, and it's just a matter of clicking install, and all these plugins are included within your paid version of ChatGPT. So once we've activated the plugins, you can activate 3 at a time. You can then ask that same question. So let's go back and copy so that I don't need to write itinerary again. And we'll say plugins. We want to use Expedia, which is one of the services, and we can then plug it in. So what ChatGPT can do on the paid version is it can connect to the internet, it can go onto Expedia's website, and it can find you flights and things like that. So now it asks us for dates when we want to go. So I don't know when Wimbledon is starting.
Let's say the 5th to the 14th of July.
5th to the 14th of July.
I think the final's on the 14th or the 15th.
So now it knows it needs to use Expedia to go and plan us our trip. And it went on, it clicked, and it got us a few pieces of information. So the first that we're seeing is here's lodging options. So we can stay at the West in London City. It gives us a price for that night. And this is something you cannot do with the unpaid version of ChatGPT. So that's why many people are switching on to the more the paid version. So DALL-E is also by the same company. It's in a similar class as generative AI like Midjourney, and it's there to create images. These images are created based off large data sets of images that was linked up with words. So you can type in anything that you would like to see, and it will generate that image for you. So let's play around with this.
Well, since it is called DALL-E, well, why don't you put Money Heist and see what comes up?
Money Heist. So let's be a little bit more specific.
Sure.
Let's ask for a particular style of painting. So what style do you like?
Contemporary?
Okay, let's do a contemporary painting of Money Heist.
That will be an interesting combination. Let's see.
Let's do it. So Money Heist. Let's see what happens. Again, this is an unscripted, unplanned version.
Oh dear.
So there might be a lot of editing involved. But within a couple of seconds, we get our first images generated.
Oh wow! You can see there on the top right, it's actually forming.
Yeah. So these are things that I generated beforehand, and we'll take a look at some of them. Oh. So there we go. So these are our contemporary images. You can click on one. You can download these. It's usable in any format. It does have a small watermark here at the bottom, which you are allowed to remove. You don't need to keep that. But say, for instance, we kind of like this image, but it needs to change a bit. You can click on variations, and it will start generating variations based off that particular version that you quite liked. So let's run through the variations.
So I mean, the Department of Arts or theatre or creative arts, I mean, they would really, even faculty, well, the further faculty, they would really benefit from this, wouldn't they?
No, definitely. It's here to stay, and some might argue, but this isn't art, and I fully agree. It's not art in the usual manner that we think of it, but it is a powerful way to quickly generate an idea. So an artist can have this idea. Say I want to have a contemporary a contemporary painting with Money Heist as my theme, and it spits out this, and this can be the precursor to your artistic journey. You can use this and build off it, and ultimately make it a whole lot better. So I think we often speak of artificial intelligence and these GPTs as artificial intelligence, but I think that's the wrong word. I think it should be augmented intelligence, where it just enhances our abilities, it improves our capabilities, and it makes life easier for us.
This is all phenomenal. I mean, we can go on and on and on and look at the various ways in which it can just help us, whether it's the free version or the paid version. But I think there's one more. I mean, we have generative AIs now focusing on maybe songs or music or even videos, and disrupting the cinematic or the Hollywood industry. Well, what's happening there?
So in terms of media, it's really taken the world by storm, and we're seeing songs being written by AI. For instance, we'll probably have a link up to Rocket Ship, which the author asked to combine a few different artists, Imagine Dragons, Coldplay, and the likes, and AI wrote this song. We can ask ChatGPT to write us a song as well. Quickly, write me a song about load shedding in South Africa. The song should be humorous.
You have to sing to it.
Oh shucks! and just like that, we get our song. In South Africa, there's a problem we all know. It's called load shedding. Load shedding. Let the laughter flow. The power goes off, and we are left in the dark. But hey, let's find some humor. Let's make our mark. So we've got a chorus going there as well, and you get generative AIs that's coming into the generating of music. So we can probably use that to get the music going, and then have these lyrics on, and perhaps we should play around with that. But even though this is a very powerful tool, it does have limitations. For instance, if I were to ask it, write an essay on the famous cricket player Herman Mayberg, it'll write you a article with early career highlights. It will tell you that
a work of fiction, basically.
A work of fiction. I mean, one-day internationals and T20 cricket, and as you can attest, I'm terrible at cricket. So
I think in the metaverse, it's quite accurate.
Probably, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in accordance to the load shedding chorus and note, I think on that note, I think you've ignited us with a lot of light in terms of what GPTs can do, the what, the why, and the how. And we urge all the viewers who are watching this to please play around a lot more with various forms of GPTs. Due to time constraints, we haven't been able to go through Bard, which is the GPT by Google. There are other forms of generative AI technologies that you could use, but please do go onto Bard of Google or even ChatGPT by OpenAI and play around with it and see what it can do. Of course, we have to use it in a responsible way. And to take this discussion forward in the next section, we are going to be talking about the ethical and legal implications of generative AI, especially within the academic context. So on that note, I would like to thank you, Dr. Herman Mayberg, for your time and for shedding light in terms of how GPTs what it can do and how we could incorporate it within our work. And we'd like to thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Habib. And yeah, I look forward to seeing what South Africans are going to do with this technology.
Well, and the lights are going to go out just soon, so tap on.
Load shedding's a challenge, but we'll make it all right. With humor and laughter, we'll conquer the dark. Load shedding won't break us, it's just another spark. Guess it's just another spark.
Moving on from this, we're going to be having some exciting sessions on how generative AIs and GPTs can have an effect on research, innovation, and various activities within higher education. Professor Daniel, Professor Mags, thank you very much once again for joining us. We're really excited to unpack the op-ed that you had published in The Conversation, and specifically around the push that higher education needs in the context of assessment using generative AIs or even various forms of GPTs. Let's start with you, Daniel. What are your thoughts? Can you give us a little bit more?
Well, thank you for having us. It's wonderful to be here. So I guess people are often really scared about the possibility that assessment is impossible in the wake of AI, that students are going to cheat, that we won't be able to determine whether or not they know anything. I'm less concerned than most people for two reasons. The first of which is that students have always cheated, and the best way to stop cheating has never been through enforcement. It's been through convincing them that it wasn't in their best interest to cheat. That it's now a little harder to catch them, but it doesn't change the fact that really the best way to stop students from cheating is to convince them that the right way to engage in academic inquiry is through honest integrity and learning the material. And we could talk more about that later if you'd like. But the second thing is that AI is here. It's here for the future. And the world outside of the classroom, students are going to need to use AI to do all of the things. We can't even imagine what the next generation of work is going to be in the world of AI. And so higher education should be training students to be effective in the world that they're entering. And that world is a world in which AI is part of the way that they think, not just a supplement or a tool. And so if we train them in a world and say, and you're not allowed to use AI, and then we release them into a world where what they're doing is AI, then we're doing them a disservice. And so what we really want to be thinking about is how can we incorporate the tools they will be using for the rest of their lives into the curriculum? And once we've done that, then it makes sense to, when we're thinking about assessment, we would assess them using the tools that we are training them to use. And so if we rethink how we're going about education, we rethink how we go about assessment, we can actually make our education more effective for the students entering a world full of AI rather than less effective.
Thanks for that, Danny. And I think your important points really gives us an indication of how there's a need for us to embrace AI rather than be fearful of AI. And I think a balanced approach is rather maybe needed to see, well, if it's not just a tool, responsibly. So thanks for that opening point, which I think is really important. Mags, over to you. How do we build on that within the context of assessment in higher education?
Yeah, I think, it's definitely building on Danny's point, the fact that one of the key concepts in higher education at the moment is this notion of authentic assessment. And that is assessing in a way that is congruent with what tasks students will be doing when they go out into the real world. And again, given that they will be using AI tools, we need to assess in a way that is congruent with that. So getting them to use Philip Dawson from Deakin University has this really useful notion of a taxonomy of limitations. Do we limit the tools that they use? Do we limit the access to people? Do we limit the access to information? And to what extent do we do that in any assessment task? And I think that really takes us, if you're testing something, say, disciplinary vocabulary, you're going to want a closed book, in-person, invigilated test that is appropriate in that context. But if you're asking the student to, apply their knowledge to some new problem, then actually having access to the whole of the internet, any tool they want, and to collaborate with their peers is much more appropriate. So thinking about differentiated assessments in the context of a particular course, having a variety of different assessment tasks that really test different kinds of knowledge so that knowledge is built appropriately for that discipline, I think is the real invitation of this time. And again, I think it's an exciting possibility of saying, actually, we need to rethink this. COVID gave us one opportunity and we didn't really embrace it. As soon as we could go back to the old thing, we did. And AI tools make going back to the old thing. If we try and restrict the use of AI tools, higher education will die because it will no longer be fit for purpose.
I completely agree with that point, and I think it's important that we go with the technologies that are currently present. We speak a lot of the dot-com bubble and how many had to embrace that and various other forms of technologies. But we're seeing that, aside from generative AIs, we're seeing various forms of other AIs now being introduced into various contexts, not just within higher education, but within other sectors as well. And I like the fact that you guys have spoken as well onto different disciplines or fields, because I think it is dependent on the different type of field or discipline that one would be in, of how they actually integrate GPTs into higher education, or particularly within assessments. Would you agree that diversifying assessments or diversifying assessment pedagogies would be really more important for the educators than in fact just going with your traditional assessments, and then you would actually see an increased risk of cheating or plagiarism or those kinds of things? Would you say that diversifying assessment pedagogies would be more important? Daniel?
Yeah, I'm not sure that it's about the diversifying itself so much as using the appropriate assessment for the appropriate lesson. If it wouldn't be the case in higher education that I was teaching spelling, but imagine I were teaching spelling, then I wouldn't want students to be able to use a spell check because it would undermine the entire purpose of that lesson plan. But when I'm teaching students how to do high-level analysis of various arguments and read the literature and write reports on that, I am not testing whether they can spell. And so I'm quite happy to have them use spell check. It leads to better papers, and it, again, is more authentic in that the real world in the workplace, they're typically going to have access to spell check or Grammarly or other tools like that. And so in the sense, we could say, yes, that's diversifying assessment, because depending on what the lesson plan is, I use a different tool. But I wouldn't do diversifying assessment for the sake of diversifying the assessment. I think it's always been the case that what we should do is choose our assessments based on what we're hoping to measure and what we're hoping to help students learn. And I think that the difference between the past and now is that the explosion of AI and tools has forced us to really take that to heart and really think through more deeply what the optimal assessment would be for a given lesson plan. And I think in the past, people have been able to successfully just sort of default to, well, write an essay or take a test. And I think now we're going to have to be much more thoughtful about what is the optimal way of approaching the question. And I think that will lead to diversity of assessments. But it's not about the diversity per se, it's about the fact that the assessment plans align with the goals of the course.
So when we look into both diversity and alignment imperatives, would that also need to be conducted within curricula? So, I mean, if we are diversifying or realigning per se, the various assessments that we use in higher education, does it require a lot of educators? Now, this is also discipline and field specific, but would it require a lot of educators to then maybe relook at the curricula or revise their curricula? Because perhaps sometimes assessments or revisiting assessments may not be aligned to existing curricula that have been used over some time. Mags, what are your thoughts on that?
I totally agree. I think as soon as you start to think about assessment and you start to think about how do we build knowledge in this particular field, rather than, you know, this is what chemistry 1 has always looked like. How do we build a chemical understanding of the world that requires us, it requires us to rethink how we're teaching and what we're teaching and the scaffolding of that teaching. So this is not a project we're going to solve in the next 6 months. This is something that's going to really deeply challenge most people who are teaching at a higher education level.
Yeah, I'd like to take that a step further. Not only is it not going to be resolved in the next 6 months, ideally it will never be resolved, because ideally we will constantly be updating curricula and we will constantly be rethinking what we are doing. We don't want to ever rest on our laurels and say, well, this is what's been done in the past, so I'm sure it'll be fine for the future. We can always be innovating and making it better. And the new tools that arrive, in this case, they're creating an impetus for this where we haven't had to do it, so people haven't. But I would love to create a culture in which it's just a normal everyday thing to be thinking about how can we update and improve the curriculum and the assessment tools and everything that we're doing for whatever the world is. And even if the world isn't changing, we can still be getting better. But the world is changing, which forces us to be better.
Daniel, you mentioned culture, which I think is an important factor. And another factor that we've also experienced in our universities, not just with AIs, but even with various forms of technologies or innovations used in teaching and learning, is that we have identified a generational gap. There seems to be a little bit more of a reluctance of, educators with respect who have been in a higher education for so long, but the reluctance to actually embrace these various changes or rethinking assessment with these technologies. What would your advice, and I mean, this question is posed to both of you, what would you suggest, how these educators could embrace these kinds of technologies, not just within assessment, but even with teaching and learning, whether they are Generation X's, millennials, various generations? How do we get all of them to embrace these technologies?
That is a great question and a difficult question. I think one thing we can do is we can examine the barriers to adoption. And I think one of them is simply just time and facility with these new tools. I mean, new tools come out, faculty are extremely busy. We work 90 hours a week trying to get everything working, and then all of a sudden we have to learn a new tool, and a lot of people don't really have the time to master it to the level that they're comfortable teaching with the tools. And that's something that I think we can improve with better training on tools and creating partnerships. I mean, one thing, I tend to be more radical on this than most people, but I feel like we should be in partnership with our students. The traditional way is the faculty are the experts and we teach to the students and they listen to our wisdom and accept it. But we can be increasing student agency, student autonomy, and student involvement in the lessons that they're that we're developing, and there's no reason that education has to go one way. And so I feel like I have a lot of students who are computer science majors, who are math majors, who are electrical engineers, and I work with them. I bring them in as teaching assistants, and I have them work with me to teach me what is going on in their disciplines and to help me figure out how to best deliver content in my discipline of psychology. And that works really well. We both learn, and it's a great experience for them. They learn psychology through helping me develop curriculum, and I learn about computer science and the latest developments in AI through their inputs. And I think that trying to create a culture where it is more of a partnership between students and teachers rather than a hierarchy would probably help a great deal.
Yeah, I think I want to add to that is that recognizing that actually AI tools are extremely useful in research. So particularly at research intensive universities, it is amazing what you can do with things like illicit or lateral, or, there's so many lit maps that really accelerate the research process. So so that's one of the strategies that we're using, is making that visible to our academics as well, to say it's not just about GPTs. This will help you in your research. And then once they're getting excited about it, and one of my colleagues realized that she could teach one of the GPT models to write like she writes by training it on various of her papers. So there's enormous potential for how we can use these tools to accelerate our research projects as well.
That's a really great point. I'm like writing down notes on what you're saying, because it's really a good idea.
So one of the greatest physicists or scientists of our time, Professor Richard Feynman, had taught us that science or even technology can fuel ignorance, and ignorance fuels science. And I want to thank both of you today for fueling our ignorance around generative AIs, and specifically how AIs can be embraced and used within the context of higher education and assessments. The emergence of GPTs represent a significant step forward in human-machine interaction. Its potential to enhance communication, facilitate access to information, and act as an assistant or tool holds immense promise for the future. However, it is crucial to approach its development and deployment ethically, addressing biases and ensuring responsible use. Join us next time as we interrogate this topic further.
The University of Johannesburg. The future reimagined.